Truck dealers have been screwing customers in the last 3 to 4 years. We've seen truck prices rise to an alarming rate. We scratch our head, 1 second we see them costing $50,000. The next moment we're seeing trucks on average costing $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. What happened? What happened in the last 4 years? And is this even right? How are customers getting screwed so bad? Could it be we let them? See, a few short years ago, people were getting out there, they're agitated, they got money from the government, they got the handouts, so they wanted to get out there and they wanted to buy a new vehicle. Unfortunately, what we saw was a lot of the factories were closed, and companies like Ford, GM, we even know Toyota actually closed their factory for a period of time, and it created all sorts of shortages. But supply and demand kicks in, and people decided they still wanted to buy vehicles. They had money, easy come, easy go. They wanted to buy a new vehicle. And so a lot of this inventory that we see here is still residual from 2 or 3 years ago. Yes, a lot of these vehicles are still sitting. They're not selling like they should have. And even with these aggressive incentives at the end of 2024, it still didn't wipe the slate clean for a lot of trucks that still won't sell. Well, the OEMs and the dealers realized that they could pretty much put any price tag to a vehicle and somebody would buy it. Right here we have a very basic trim level truck, obviously a Ford, no slider, basic steel wheels on there. Absolutely cheap, cheap, cheap. And I can look even inside and we just see cloth seats, basic interior, not much to write home about. And it's clearly an F-150 XL, so it's a very basic trim level of truck. How much are these trucks going for? This is equivalent to what we're seeing over in Ram, where Ram was overpricing a lot of their vehicles in the last few years. But they did have a couple of base trim vehicles. They had the Tradesman, which was a very low trim level, and as well the Classic, which was based on an old skin, an old platform that they were just trying to clear out inventory so they could afford to get rid of them on a song and a dance, but they still try to charge a significant amount of money. Right here we have an F-150, very basic, not many features there, is there? But this is the XL, and even the XL is going for $67,000. That's right, folks, $67,000 plus extras, plus mats. You put, okay, they give you the mud guards here. If you put a little paint protection film on the front, you probably want to protect the paint. This is going to cost you over $70,000 out the door for a basic XL. But the dealers knew that people didn't want the base trim. They wanted full-size trucks like this big Harley Davidson, and they wanted upper trim level vehicles with more features. You know, the GMC Elevation was a vehicle that could sell. It was a price point truck that was selling, but people wanted the Denali's. They wanted the more upper trim level vehicles. And people, you know, obviously the TRD Pros from Toyota and some of the upscale trucks from Ford, like the Lariat, for example, was another trim level vehicle that was more popular. Nobody wanted the XL when they could get a Lariat like this. But with the Lariat and a lot of these upper trim level vehicles, clearly these manufacturers recognized that buyers were willing to pay. Obviously, this is an F-150 Lariat right here. You'll notice the difference. You get the running boards, you get chrome there, you get chrome, you get big, beautiful chrome rims. Even the headlights look different, and the grille is much, much nicer. It's a very, very good looking truck. And it doesn't matter if it's Ford, GM, even Toyota got on the wagon, recognized TRD Pro, yes, sell like hotcakes. You could spend $70,000 or $80,000 on a Tacoma that's decked out. I even had a buddy that bought one this year, and they kept trying to pitch him on all these extras, you know, tonneau cover, mud guards, and the rest. And the dealers were trying to push all that extra product. If the vehicle didn't come like that from the manufacturer, they tried to add the extras on at the lot and continue to gouge and take all kinds of extra money that they could pull out of the transaction. But here we're looking at a Lariat F-150, and how much is this one going for? Well, let's take a quick look and see. It's a little icy around here, but let's take a look. This one, F-150, you'll notice the list is quite a bit longer on this vehicle, and this one goes for $86,000 priced up, meaning that now by the time you put on your taxes and extras, you're well into the $90,000 range. And this is more like what we're seeing. I actually saw Lariats going for as much as $100,000 Canadian, where it's absolutely obscene. When literally 5 years ago, you could get a fairly loaded up diesel pickup truck for under $100,000, and that was a fairly high load. Now you could barely get a half-ton truck for under $70,000 or $80,000, and customers are still paying this. Unfortunately, now we're seeing some very worrying trends, because we saw people willing to buy. They wanted to spend top dollar, and the OEMs and the manufacturers as well as the dealers recognized they smell blood in the water, and they knew that they could get a bite of that. They knew that they could charge whatever they want. And this is where customers like you and I, if we were just needing a truck for work, we felt screwed. We felt squeezed out of the market. I heard tradespeople say, you know, I need a basic truck for work, but they couldn't even find a basic work truck. And even if they did, it was elevated in price. A lot of these dealers were jacking prices up just because they could. There was ADMs, adjusted dealer markups on almost everything, on almost every type of truck you could possibly find about 2 or 3 years ago. And it got frustrating for people that actually needed to do a little bit of work with their trucks. And even gorgeous trucks like this, with a little bit of extra bling, you have a slightly better set of all-road tires, off-road tires, Tremel, you have the decals there. Beautiful vehicle. Obviously the improved enhanced rear tail assembly. You also get the rear slider on this vehicle, painted, finished parts like this, and of course extra details like this just meant people, you know, they wanted something a little bit dressier, a little flashier, a little sportier, so they started gravitating to trucks like this. Why would you want an XL when you can get a truck like this with the bigger wheels? You can get the 35, 36-inch wheels on some of these vehicles, and look, you even got a sunroof in this unit. But these don't come cheap, and the Tremors were a popular model. And why is that? Well, at $93,000, this did not represent good value, and there was price markups on everything, even trucks like that, and that's where the trouble got real. We're seeing repossessions now up 23% in 2024, a clear indication that people were getting in over their heads. And people often wanted something shiny and flashy like this big beautiful truck right here. And it didn't matter whether you were buying one of these vehicles, the Raptor. As you'll notice, you've got the Raptor decals right there, the logo. You have all of the greatness here, true off-road experience, whether you bought something like this or from Toyota with the TRD Pros, you bought the Tundra. A lot of these vehicles were going for significant amount of money, and they were being marked up. That's the catch. It wasn't just the dealer, it wasn't just the manufacturer taking advantage of the buyers. Then it got to the dealer level and they were throwing amendments. They were throwing extra costs on top, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. This was happening with trucks or any popular vehicles like the Bronco right here. The Broncos, now you're starting to see them start piling it back up on the lot. I mean, they were selling like hotcakes. You couldn't find these anywhere. And so as a result, people were getting out there and willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars over sticker. And that's where they got snookered. They start putting themselves too far in debt just to get a popular new model. Sure, you get a nice all-terrain tire on here, great detailings like this. And these were popular trucks. These Broncos, the full-size Broncos, these full-size Broncos really were, and you could not find them anywhere on the lot. But this one here, for example, is going for about $68,000. Yes, 68 grand for this unit means that, again, we're dealing with over $70,000 out the door. Yes, repossessions are up. People just wanted what they wanted, but unfortunately, the dealers smelt it. They smelt people wanted. They smelt the desperation, and they were really taking the screws to a lot of buyers. It's unfortunate. Yes, it's a capitalist society, but what they did was truly harmful to the truck buyer. And then every car manufacturer tried to come up with something creative. In this case, we see these Harley Davidson pickup trucks here, 1-ton, full-size lift-kitted truck, obviously costing a significant amount of money. I saw the sticker on one of these vehicles, and we're talking about a truck that's costing $185,000. That's right, people were deciding to buy now with their emotions more so than what they truly needed. Because Ford came up with some special edition models, the Raptors, the Harley Davidson trucks, for example. Toyota and the TRD were some of them as well. And Ram came up with some of their own high trim level trucks that people really wanted to have. They didn't need to have, but they were buying them. And that, of course, the dealers were really charging significant markups on a lot of those high trim level trucks. They knew they couldn't make as much money on the XLs. They couldn't make it on the Tradesman from Ram. Even the base trim trucks that GM has is putting out with a 4-cylinder. Who wants a 4-cylinder full-size half-ton truck? Nobody here that I know of that's doing any real work is buying a 4-cylinder full-size pickup truck. Those are the vehicles that were at affordable price point. But now Ram has gone and pretty much eliminated the Classic, and that's off the market now. Obviously, trying to get the lower trim level vehicles means they're trying to reduce the vehicles with low amounts of margin. Yes, that's right. They want to sell trucks, and only trucks and cars with high profit margins. And then Ford and many others are getting into the electrified market. Here we have a Mustang Mach-E. And we also know the F-150 Lightning is another poor seller. They had to be highly incentivized. Yes, in other words, Ford claims that they're losing tens of thousands of dollars on the sale of every one of their electric vehicles, yet they continue selling them. What's going on? Do you think customers feel sorry for Ford that they're losing money on the sale of those? Are we going to lose any sleep over it? Do we feel sorry for what these dealers are doing, charging a significant amount of money on the sale of almost every other vehicle to make up for the sales of one of their electrified vehicles? Not too many buyers are looking to feel sorry. I don't think there's too many tears shed over the fact that there's a loss of cash and capital on the sale of every one of their electric vehicles. Many of these truck manufacturers say that they have very little profits in each one of their vehicle that they sell. But the bottom line is it sounds more like a business issue, or it sounds more like a quality issue, because we know Ford has had significant problems. NHTSA has recognized that they've had some major problems. You know what, that one with the downshift hard, doing 60 miles an hour and it downshifts the first gear? Yes, there's a recall for that. And on the Escapes, they had that 1.5 liter turbo 3-cylinder that was puking gas. And so there was apparently, allegedly, a recall on an issue with the fuel injectors. Now, initially Ford said all they were going to do was put a trough there, let it drain out, and use the computer to look for pressure drops. And then NHTSA said, no, that's not good enough. We're not satisfied with that, because Ford, in all their infinite wisdom, creates a product that maybe not always ready for the market. In my own opinion, we're seeing a lot of these vehicles, and a lot of these problems are landing in the hands of the consumer. Similar product over here with the Bronco Sports. They also carry a same drivetrain, and they're having similar issues. The full-size Broncos, like we're looking at here, is yet another issue. Have you heard? There was a recall for some of the valves cracking the heads, falling off into the intake chamber, and then, of course, naturally caffing the engine. Yes, cratering the engine was a result in some small amount of these vehicles. There's a whole pile of issues related to some of these full-size Broncos, and they're not out of the woods just yet. I've also heard a lot of people complain quality problems with cam phasers, rattly engines, particularly on cold startup, means a lot of these clearly are not dialed in yet, and a lot of customers are starting to feel the burn. GM has also had a recent issue now with transmissions that they're having problems with, as well as engines. Have you heard a major recall with potential bad engines? That's right, rod bearings, as well as some of the lifter issues that we're hearing about in the old 5.3s or 6.2s. GM's got their own problems. Toyota, their 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 also has some quality problems, and they're throwing out main bearings as well, allegedly because of some debris left in the engine. It's clear that it's an entire market issue, and it seems to be affecting almost every single truck manufacturer. But again, the worst thing is that the customer pays the price. We don't just pay the price at the front end by paying $80, $90, $100,000 for a new truck, but we also pay the price for quality issues, driving away, having to visit the service department 2, 3, 4 times over to rectify a recall. We also have to worry about the fact once warranty runs out, what's going to happen. With Toyota and the 3.4 and their Tundras is a real significant issue, and we're starting to hear problems with that their customers are worried about what happens when the warranty's gone. What if their vehicle is one of those that Toyota takes behind the shop doors, says, you know what, we looked it over, it meets the criteria, check, health check, we're good. So you drive it away, they didn't put an engine in, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, 2 years outside of warranty, the engine goes. Is that possible? There are customers allegedly worried about that very scenario. And so every one of these truck manufacturers seems to be going through some serious quality issues. So you think, okay, I want to buy a new one, okay? Interest rates maybe 7%. Some of these vehicles are highly incentivized. We saw interest rates that were close to 0 at the end of 2024 just to get rid of these. Okay, that's great. What about buying a used one? Maybe a truck that's 5 years old that doesn't maybe have all the issues. Well, get yourself a used one, and the interest rates are up closer to 11% or beyond. And that's if you have a great credit score. On top of all of this issues and concerns about quality, insiders are saying that the new Ford F-150, albeit it looks exactly the same for 2025, there's approximately 2,400 less individual parts in the truck than you're finding in the 2023 and 24s. So if you go and buy yourself a brand new 2023, sure, you've got to deal with lot rot. That's one issue, because now with lot rot, if it's been sitting here for maybe 2 birthdays, 3 birthdays, possibly in some cases, we're seeing Rams. Well, I'm still seeing 2022 sitting on the lot. A lot of customers are not aware of that scenario. So a dealer comes along and says, look, we'll give you $5 grand off. But what they don't realize is these tires really are only good for maybe 7 or 8 years, 10 years tops. The battery that drives or that starts the ignition, those batteries are only good for 4 or 5 years. And so that you will need a replacement soon, $500 battery. Of course, the paint It may not match again if you have any body damage or body work that needs to be done, because the sun sitting out in the sun for 3 years is going to be slightly different than if it was brand new. There's all kinds of deterioration. We also can't forget that in your back 40 like this, you get rodents. Rodents jump up in there and they could start gnawing away on wiring and start chewing away and start corroding some of the wiring underneath. Flat spots on the tires, and all kinds of deterioration is going on a truck that's been sitting here for 3 years. And so a lot of these dealers continue to try to hose the buyer and say, look, we'll give you $3,000 off. We'll even give you $5,000 off, but that's not enough. And now with all of these trucks sitting on the lot, you're starting to see inventory start to build again. Now there was a little bit of a shortening of inventory here at the end of 24, simply because a lot of these dealers were incentivizing everything, and a lot of those vehicles tend to walk out the door. People bought them because of the heavy incentives, because of the big discounts we saw at 24. Ford, we know, is one of the best sellers. GM also one of the best sellers. They were selling trucks. Toyota, we're starting to see inventory pile up. Toyota Tundras, I've never seen so many Tundras on a car lot in one time as I have this year. And we're seeing a lot of Tundras start to pile up. Tacomas on the lot. Vehicles that you would never historically see. Some of the other Toyotas are selling like hotcakes, but for some reason, their trucks are not selling. Customers are starting to figure this out. And people are done getting hosed. They're starting to realize the writing was on the wall. They also start to realize that what they saw 2 or 3 years ago, where people were overpaying for a lot of their trucks, that they paid, there was an addendum or ADM on a lot of these vehicles. They might have paid an extra $10,000 or $15,000 because it was a hot truck at the time. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, once it's settled into its natural depreciation curve, which is closer to about 30 to 40% in 5 years, they're starting to realize that they dropped down, they had a much bigger fall. So yes, they're underwater, negative equity, and a lot of people that bought trucks 2 or 3 years ago now are finding themselves owing way more to the bank for that vehicle than the vehicle's actually worth. And to make matters worse, some of these manufacturers are doing things that are a little bit sneaky. They start creating products like this. We have the Maverick. Why? Because they overcharged for all their full-size pickup trucks, where 5 years ago, Garden Variety Lunchbox Joe could afford to buy one of these full-size trucks, whether they need it for work or heading out to the cabin on the weekend to tow their little trailer, their little bowler, or what have you. They can no longer afford it because these massive price escalations we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years. Now Ford comes out with something that's a little bit cheaper. Hence, we have the Maverick. Well, that may seem all well and good, but a lot of people saw that as an insult. Well, some people got on the wagon and decided, I just need a vehicle. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to bicker. I'm just going to buy myself a lower cost truck because this now became available. Well, look, we now have a Tremor. We have obviously a Maverick over here. We have XL, XLTs, Lariats. This one's a mid-trim, obviously XLT. And you know, this one here does not give you rear slider. There's no leather in here. You get a lot more basic finishing, more plastics, more basics. But a lot of people really gravitated to the Maverick Hybrid, and they just wanted something that was cute, fun, and actually met the intent of having a pickup truck. A lot of people didn't really care if it wasn't a full-size truck. A lot of people literally saw that, you know what, it's got a box, it has some versatility that I need, and this is all that I need, and it's fine. But many other people saw this as a poke in the eye when all of a sudden they come up with the Ranger that was more money than the outgoing F-150, and then they come up with the Maverick, and I've seen these as much as $55,000 right here in Lariat form. Clearly not necessarily the affordable truck people were hoping for. So the problem is a lot of people were priced out of the market. They could no longer afford a full-size truck. They need it for work, whether they're a contractor or what have you. And coming out with a Maverick just seemed more insult to injury. A lot of these manufacturers started doing this. Toyota with the Tacoma. Now they're cheaping out there with the turbo 4-cylinder engine. The Tundra with the turbo V6. Gone are the V8s. Gone are the V6s in the Tacoma. And now in comes a lack of reliability. A lot of these vendors now are creating products that just don't have the durability, and they're creating small engines. I mean, GM and their 4-cylinder and a half-ton, a 2.4 liter in Toyota's Tacoma, a 3.4 liter in the Tundra, the full-size truck. I mean, where does it go from there? We know Ford's been doing the 3.5 liter for some time, and they seem to have it dialed in. But the point is, people want value, and the value's not there. So people are starting to open their eyes and realize the truck market has been screwing them over the last 4 years. And GMCs are piling up on the lot as well. They're not selling like they should have as well, but a lot of that has to do with the value add and the lack thereof, and customers now are starting to realize they don't have the money. I mean, look at this. This is what you're getting for the money. You want to go working? This is a classic work truck. Of course, here you do get a GMC or a Chevy, obviously the Chevrolet grille, but very basic. You get the steel rims, 2500 HD, you got lots of plastic everywhere. You don't even get a crew cab. This is basically a long box, regular cab. You do get four-wheel drive, which is good, but everything else is very basic. You get the no slider, it's plastic inside. You know, inside the interior, it looks very, there's cloth, no sunroof, no nothing. It's very basic, but it's a work truck. And hey, guess what? You do get the 6.6 liter and the Allison transmission, so it's not totally basic. But what is this? Well, we got a 2500 four-wheel drive WT regular truck, and WT you get the 6.6 liter V8, as I gotta point that out, V8 VVT engine, Allison 10-speed automatic. The transmission's good, the engine, you know what, it is what it is. But this truck here comes at a whopping price tag of almost $68,000, over $70,000 for a basic, basically 4x4, but regular cab, simpleton little truck. This is what people are having to aspire now to afford this, and people are making a decision. I can't afford new, I can't afford slightly used, because interest rates are so high, so it pushes me out of that market. And we've seen the sales on used trucks actually climb slightly, but that's only the spillover from the highly incentivized trucks that we saw at the end of 24. Means that a lot of people just are out of the market now. They're pushed out of the market. I feel like I'm pushed out of the market. I'm like the rest of you. I'd love to have a new truck. My old 2003 Ram is a great runner, but you know what? It's getting old, you know, and there's a time where I'm gonna need something a little newer. And I've been shopping around, but I just can't afford these trucks. And I know I'm a lot like each and every one of you. And it's so infuriating, so frustrating that we can't go out there. We can't just afford a truck. We work well, we work hard, we try to earn a living, and yet we can't even afford to buy a new vehicle to get us to work. What are we resorting to now? Beaters, you know, 20, 30-year-old vehicles? Who's buying these trucks? Who's able to afford these brand new trucks? Big, beautiful Z71 right here. This isn't the cheap special either. Any of these other diesels or 3/4, 1-ton trucks, how much is a Z71 going for? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Well, yeah, there you go. $77,000. $77,000 for this unit means that this is not a cheap unit. Yeah, you don't even get, there's no running boards, there's no sliders on it. What about inside? No. Yeah, you do get, well, I don't know if that's pleather or if that's leather. There's no sunroof. So it's quite a low to mid spec. I would call this sort of XLT level. If you're comparing it to Ford, maybe XL, XLT. This looks like an XLT, the LTZ. It's a nice looking truck. You get the all-terrain tires at least. But you know what? That's not a cheap amount of money. I mean, you're up at $80,000 Canadian for this vehicle. I can only wish. And the worst part is knowing that if I buy this vehicle, in 5 years, it's going to start to rust. They're just not built like they used to be either. I mean, we're starting to see a lot of these vehicles that start to rust there, and the infamous spot, the rocker, and this rear section over here starts to rust. This will be rusty before you know it, because anybody living in the northern states or Canada recognizes what rust does to a lot of these trucks, and they're not built to sustain. They're not built to hold up against that. People are just getting frustrated, and they're starting to ignore these deals. It doesn't matter if the incentives are there. People are starting to say, look, I can't afford it. This doesn't mean that much to me. I'd love to have a new truck, but people are making that decision, and that's why inventory is starting to rise. That's why we're seeing more and more of these trucks on the lot. Sure, they had a good year end, and they all do that to appease the shareholders, every one of them. They do that. They put these big incentives. They put 0% down or 3.9, 4.9% just to get these vehicles moving. Try to put some heavy incentives, tell the salespeople to go, just make a deal happen, don't care how much. And they're willing to negotiate. And that's simply for the numbers. That's only so the numbers look good on paper to appease the shareholders. Because remember, profits can never level or go down. Every one of these manufacturers has to see this constant uprising in the value of the stock prices. This happens everywhere. It happens in the banks too. And when stock prices go down, what does that mean? That's bad. CEOs walk, people get fired, things get liquidated, and bad things happen. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, look at Stellantis with a lot of the Rams and Jeep products and Chrysler. people are getting fired, plants are getting closed, CEOs gone. I mean, things start happening. It's not good. It's never a good scene for any of these corporate games when sales aren't there, when sales and profits are not there. But unfortunately, it's coming on the hides of the buyers like you and me. I wish I could afford one of these trucks, and I know a lot of you are saying the same thing. I know there's always new trucks out there, and there's always somebody out there buying a new truck, and you know, Baja, you know, there's always somebody buying something new, and there's varying levels of affordability, and people that can afford these trucks at different levels. Some can afford it, some stretch, some it's just writing a check and it's easy. But unfortunately, there's more and more and more people squeezed down tighter and tighter into a much smaller percent of the population who can actually afford to buy one of these full-size trucks. Very few people can actually afford a brand new truck these days. And it doesn't matter if it's GM, Chevy, Toyota, Ford, Ram, they're all the same. They're all playing the same game, delivering a product that isn't as reliable as it used to be, is 30, 40, 50% more than it was 5 years ago, but yet inflation only accounts for about a 12% increase in that time frame. Where's the rest of the margin go? It's greedflation from my perspective. A lot of people think, okay, well, you know what, I'll buy a used truck as well. I mean, the new trucks are priced out of my market. Let's just buy a used truck. That's the problem. Most of the used stuff is pretty banged up, beat up. And then if you do happen to find a nice one, these dealers gouge you on that one too. And if it's a late model, say a 2 or 3 year old truck, and it happens to only have maybe 40,000 miles on it, you're paying as much as you would brand new. In some cases, with Toyotas, we've actually seen them charge more for a used vehicle that's a couple years old than they are brand new. It just means you didn't have to wait. But guess what? Toyota land, you don't have to wait anymore because the trucks are starting to fill the lots. But there was a time when you would actually have to wait. I was at the Toyota dealer recently, and I told them, you know what, I was looking at the new 4Runner, and they said, you know what, you can't get the outgoing one, the old 4-liter. And I said, I want a brand new 4-liter, how much? They said, well, you can't find those. And you can, by the way, because I looked. But they play these damn games with people, and people are getting fed up. But I went in there, they said, you can't find them. And if you find one, it's extremely rare. And what we generally do is charge, you know, $8,000, $7,000, $8,000 over MSRP, just because they're hard to find and they're highly sought after. Anytime somebody's talking market adjustment fee is the time that I walk away. And see, that's what you and I need to consider. The days of just signing on the dotted line, paying over market value and paying for these market adjustment fees, that's how a big part of how we got here today. That's a big reason why people are paying higher prices than we've ever seen for a lot of these trucks. Granted, inflation is always a factor, but we're way beyond inflation. This isn't about inflation anymore. This is about dealers taking the consumers for a ride. That, my friends, is a big reason what's happening right now. People are walking away. People are making decisions to fix their old beaters like that and no longer bother buying a lot of these brand new vehicles. And a lot of these new vehicles just are going to sit. And normally, when you roll into the next year and the 25s start rolling in, that's when you start to see this bit of a rush again. You start to see this slow pickup of sales. But that actually hasn't happened this year like we've seen in like we've seen in typical years. No, people are not buying right now. People don't have the money. They're just trying to feed the families. People don't have the money that they need to pay for the house, food. Rather, instead of spending on that highly priced vehicle, they're just, you know what, putting the money in the bank, paying their rent, paying their mortgage, paying for food, and that's all they need to do for now and hold down until some of these vehicle prices start coming down to a much more reasonable and affordable price. And with all of that said, what's going on with Stellantis, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler? Yikes, it's starting. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.